Hi all, I've been asked by a few people if I'd make a YouTube video for my gear indicator kit that I make. So here we go. Hopefully it's not too boring. Hopefully you find it useful. If not, tough. What comes in the kit? You get your gear module, the display unit, the connector plug, a little square of plastic, tinted plastic to go in your display, and an instruction pamphlet. Now this video will show you how to mount the display in the clocks like this, like I've done on mine. There is an alternative to this. If you want it a bit easier, you can actually mount the display where your existing neutral light is. All you need to do is take the bulb holder out. Don't disconnect the wiring from the bulb holder though, because that runs a lot of safety circuits on the bike with your neutral switch and your clutch switch and your side stand switch. So you need to leave that in situ, just leave it tucked behind the dash. But you can pop the front off the clocks and then just feed the display through the existing hole where your bulb goes, and just pop the little coloured bit of plastic in front just to give it a tint, just so it finishes it off and looks nice. That's a bit easier if you fancy that. If not, this video will talk you through how to put it in the clocks and mount it behind your rev counter. Thanks for watching. Okay, so this is where we fit the gear indicator to the bike. To do this, you need to remove the front screen, 6 bolts, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You then need to remove the infill panels on both sides. There's 3 screws, one there, and one in there, and the same on the other side. So we've already taken these off. You also need to remove the wing mirror arm infill covers as well. 2 bolts on here, one here and one here. Once you've taken them out, we can just slide the screen out like that, and then we need to remove the clock covers. Now to do this, you've got 6 screws, one here and 2 on the other side, and then 2 tucked in the top, one there and one there. So we're just going to undo those and hopefully not drop them down inside your nose cone. There's one. Now the only tools I've used for this so far, apart from myself, is a Phillips screwdriver. That's all we needed up to now. So now we just need to take the clock facer off. This can be, if anyone's not done this before, a bit fiddly, and you have to kind of wiggle it around and move the handlebars about a bit occasionally. I would suggest not doing it if it's really cold, because the plastic will be a bit brittle. Give it a wriggle, and there we go. That will now expose your clocks. Now what you next need to do is to remove your clocks from the nose cone, and to do that, on these little brackets here, you've got a nut on the back. So we need to undo that nut from on the other side, and that will release your whole clocks. Okay, so to remove the clocks, as we said, we need to undo these 2 nuts. 10mm spanner, that's all you need. Now as you can see on this one, hopefully, there we go, I've just used a bit of white Tipex or something just to mark the position of this bracket, because this moves on the nut. So when you undo it, this will move, and you need to line that back up so you can do your screws back up when you put your clock face back on later on. So we just crack them off and then undo the rest. Watch the nut and the racket doesn't disappear into your nose cone, and then we do the same for the other side. It is a bit fiddly to get to this one. There we go. So go for that one from underneath, it's a bit easier. Obviously, be careful when you undo these, because they do disappear into your nose cone quite easily. Just like that. Okay, so now you can just pull your clocks forward like this. You then need a pair of pliers to undo your speedo cable. Give it a twist. Undo it like that, and your clocks are now free. So now we've got the clocks loose, as you can see, the next stage is to actually disconnect the wiring harness to get the clocks out the bike. Now to do this, you need to remove the hose from your side air intake tank here with this pinch bracket. So pair along those pliers, squeeze that together, move it up, and then we can just lever that off like that, and then that just gives you the room to get down the side panel here for these wiring. So you've got your side panel wire, your side light wiring, your headlight wiring, and your main clock wiring is that big white plug. So to undo the big white plug, try and lever it forward as much as possible. It can be a bit tricky, and there's a little clip on there in the middle, as you can see there. So you push that down with your thumbnail as far as you can, give it a wriggle. It is a bit awkward. There we go, and it will come out, and then your clocks will be free to be removed from the bike. Just feed the wire through gently and out they come. So the next stage is to fit the gear indicator into your clocks. This is your gear indicator kit, supplied by my good self. That's the module. You've got the cable that connects to the gear switch, power cable, and also a display cable with a plug. And I've now wired on the display unit onto a plug, so it's easier for you guys, so you don't have to solder this on. All the tools you're going to need for this next stage are all on this table here. So we've got a large Phillips, a standing blade, a set of mole grips, a bit of masking tape, a small Phillips, 2 teaspoons, some cotton buds, a bit of nail polish remover, and some silicone sealer. So onwards and upwards. Next thing to do is dismantle the clocks. As you can see, we've got 5 screws. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 right in there. So I've taken the other 4 out, as you can see there. I'm just going to take this last one out. Just like that. And there you go. And the clock face just lifts off. Okay. Once we've done that, you then need to remove your rev counter dial. Now before you even start taking this thing apart, top tip, get your needle and lift it gently just past the bump stop, and you'll notice that the needle falls back to a position further behind the 0. Now what I've done here is I've marked this with a little bit of white paint on the casing, because that needle needs to go back in that same position, because where that positions, when you put that all back together, you need to lift it over. That gives it the right tension so the needle doesn't bounce. So once you've marked your needle, take teaspoons, 2 teaspoons, put them where the screw holes are like this, one like that, one like that, and just gently lift. There we go, and the needle will pop off just like that. Put that to one side, and then next thing, undo these 2 screws here, and then your clock face will just be removable. So once we've got our clock face removed like this, next thing we want to do is mark out where we're going to put our display. Okay, so you need to keep this over as far right as you can and in between the scale and the 1500 rev indicator there. The reason for this is there's a piece of plastic underneath that sits in the dial face that comes around there. So you need to avoid that, because that's what holds that screw back in. Otherwise you'll be in a world of mess if you fail that. So to do that, obviously, get your display. Roughly put it where you want it, and then with a pencil or something, just mark out exactly where you want it on your clock face like that. With a pencil or something, as I say, just make sure it's nice and square and it's exactly where you want it. You can make it a little bit smaller, because as you can see on there, the numbering is actually smaller than the outer casing. So if you want to go a bit smaller to start with, because you can always take a bit more paint off later, but you can't put it back on. So once you've marked it up, what you then need to do is mask this area out. As you can see, I've already done this one, so I'm just going to show you guys how to do it. So mask it up with some masking tape around the edges of your marked up square. Now, my top tip with this is do the back side first of your dials. Here's one I prepared earlier. The reason for this is the paint on the back side, there's 2 coats of paint on these things. Obviously you've got your front surface, which you see, and your back surface, which you don't see. So it's always handy to practice on the back side first, because then if you make a mess of it, you're not going to see it. Okay, so what you need to do, as I said, bit of masking tape, mask up where you're going to square out. Now, another top tip, Stanley blade, gently, very gently, because this plastic scores really easy, just run it around your masking tape edge, so you've got a bit of a lip. Otherwise, when you take the paint off, it will feather and it will bleed. So it will give you a nice, by doing that, give you a nice clean straight edge. Then all we need to do, cotton bud and some nail polish remover. So once we've got our display area all marked up, as we were saying, best thing to do, bit of nail polish remover, cotton bud, just dip it in there. Only a tiny little bit of this, because it just takes the paint straight off, and then from the middle out, just gently work it away until you've cleaned all your paint off. Easy peasy. So now we've got a dial face with, as you can see, our window cut in it. There we go. Next thing to do is to mount the display. So all we need to do with that is basically, in your kit you'll have a small piece of perspex, tinted, cut from something like this that I've dropped in the kit for you. So your little square, we're going to basically glue it onto the back side of the clock face with a bit of araldite or a bit of epoxy resin, something like that. Clamp it on, which is what these are for, and then just glue on your display module onto that piece of perspex as well. And once you've glued that on and it's all nice and square, clamp it down with the mold grips, just nice and gently. Don't go too tight with that, because if you crush the back of this display unit, that's it, it's no good. You'll damage the electronics in it. Okay, and you'll end up with something that looks like that, hopefully. As you can see, we've got the clock face in there, a bit of plastic underneath. You can just about see underneath all the glue that I've put on there to make sure it doesn't come off. And that's what it looks like on the front. Next thing to do is just to reassemble all your clocks. Okay, so to reassemble all the clocks, all you need to do is pop a small hole, I say small hole, it's about an 8mm hole, into the back of your speedo, but do it from the front so you can see what you're drilling into. I'd recommend, as you can see here, this is your normal dash bulb holder, so go below that like I've done with this one, drill a hole about the same size, that should be the same size as that, and then that will allow you to feed all your wires through. So drill your hole through, obviously you've got your display module all ready to go. Feed the wire through from the front, and just make sure that the wires aren't fouling anything inside when you push them through. You'll see easily enough. As you can see, I've reassembled this one, so I'm not taking this apart for you guys, sorry. Once you've pulled it all through, pop your screws back on, screw that in place, and then just a nice big dollop of mastic, really, that's all I've done there. Just mastic around the hole that you drilled with the cable entry, just to stop any moisture getting in there. And then that's your clock's done. All you need to then do, as we said earlier, is you've got your little marker here on the bottom. to pop your needle back on. Make sure it's lined up with your paint mark. And you can see it travels, and press it down home. There we go. Make sure it's all the way back down, and then gently just lift it over the little bump stop there. There we go. And then pop your cover on. So cover goes back on, simple as that, nice and easy. Turn it over, do your 5 screws back up, and that bit is then good to fit back onto the bike. So once all your clocks are ready to fit back on the bike, you'll notice you've now got this cable here sticking out the back of your clocks with no plugs on the end. When you get this kit, don't be tempted to snap that on. I should have said that right at the beginning of this video. Don't be tempted to snap the plug on before you do all this, otherwise you're going to have to try and take it apart again. So in your gear module, you've got a display plug with a holder. So just pull that apart, and then just very carefully, all you need to do, slide these into those holes, but just make sure they're colour matched, colour for colour, plug to socket in there. And then that bit is all done and ready to be connected up off your gear module. Okay, your gear module then has a power connection marked here. I usually mark this up with 12 volts, a black and a red. Okay, on the back of your dials, you've got 3 connectors on the back of your rev counter. Okay, the first 2 are your power. So you've got a brown, as you can see there, and a black, as you can see there. The brown is your positive, or your red, and your black is your ground. So that's where your black and your red, or sorry, your red and your black go to for the power for your indicator module. So you just undo those screws a little bit, put them wires underneath, or you can do what I've done with this one and just put another little tab on and just screw it on underneath. That's your power connections all done. So once you've done those 2 bits and you've got your module, you can pop all this back onto the bike, reassemble the front end, and then it's on to modifying your neutral switch. Okay guys, so we're now back at the bike. We've reassembled our clock faces. Now it's time to fit the module into the bike. So this is the module, as you can see here, attached to the clocks, and we're left with one wire, which is this big long cable here, and it's marked with the gear numbers. So you need to thread all that down through your bike. The best place I've found for the module to put on is just here on this cross member. There's a wiring loom there for side lights and indicators with a couple of brackets. If you use just a couple of cable ties and just make a little basket out of cable ties, that will fit on there and drops in there quite nicely, and I'll hold that quite nice and tight with a couple of cable ties around that, and then you can just tuck your cables down here underneath the clocks. Then your gear cable, this one, just thread all that through here, follow the lines along. You probably need, if you want to make a really good job of this, I have with mine, I've taken the tank off, run the cable round so it follows the main wiring loom behind the frame, and then comes out down by your gear lever and your neutral switch, ready for connecting that up. So I'm just going to get the clocks back together now, and see you in a bit. Okay, so we've threaded all the cables through, as we said. We've got the clocks back on in place. Don't forget to reconnect your speedo cable down in there. So we're going to reconnect the speedo cable, connect these plugs, put this pipe back on, and then we've got this gear cable, as I said. We're going to run that through down to the switch, and then the top end will all be done. Obviously putting the fairings and everything back on, just the reverse of when we took them apart. So the final piece of the jigsaw is fitting and modifying your neutral switch, so it indicates all the other gears from gearbox. Now to do that, you need to take off the sprocket cover, which is held on by a couple of Allen keys bolts, one there, one just tucked behind the fairing there, and one there. That will be quite tight to get off if you haven't taken it off before. It gets a bit gummed up in there, so now's a good time to give it a good clean. You might have to persuade it to come off once you've taken the bolts out. They can stick on a little bit. Once you've got it, just under here, behind the cover, you'll see one of those. That is your neutral switch, and you can see there is one connection on there already, just there, which have your neutral safety wire connected to all your start, stop, clutch switch and stuff like that. You must leave that one connected, otherwise your bike won't run, or you'll have all sorts of problems with your side stand switch and your kill switch and everything else. So leave that one connected. But you need to unscrew that, as I've done there, take it off. When you undo it, there's 2 bolts, top and bottom, as you can see, and then just pull it out. It has got a rubber seal on it. It will leak out and spit out about a tablespoonful of engine oil when you take that off, but that's about it. So take that off, and then we can take that inside, modify it, and then put it all back together. So to modify the neutral switch, as you can see, we've got one off the bike here. The switch itself inside has a brass tumbler in the gearbox, and that touches the neutral connector here. But as you rotate around the gearbox, as you can see by this circle, that's the area of travel. Now on your switch, you'll notice some indents where the other gears are. So there's first, obviously the neutral one, second, third, fourth, fifth and sixth. So you'll see them indents. I've marked them with a black marker so you can see them a bit easier for the video. All you need to do is drill a small pilot hole straight through the back of the casing, nice and square, and then just self tap in some small bolts, and then just seal them up with a bit of Loctite or a bit of Araldite or something, so it doesn't leak any oil out or anything. But the important thing is to make sure, as you feel your neutral when you take it out, that's completely flush and smooth. You need to make sure your contact points there are flush and smooth, so it doesn't cause any burrs or anything with the connector. Once you've done that, obviously just connect your extra wires onto the back of there and pop it back on the bike, and away you go.